Hey y'all, this is TCA Gaming. In this video, we're going to talk about the most expensive cards that you can pull from Wizards of the Coast booster boxes. And then before we get into it, I'm going to go through a few pricing guidelines that I used for this video. We're only going to be talking about PSA 10 prices, and the reason I'm going to use PSA 10 prices is because it's the top. We're not going to discuss BGS just because the market isn't as established as PSA. In fact, with PSA, it's very well established with almost any Wizards of the Coast holographic card. We're also only going to be doing English booster boxes. We're not going to go to the Japanese side of the releases, and then we're not going to talk about cards that were not officially released from a pack, so like the FPOs or one-offs or cards like that. And then we're also not going to go into promo sets unless the card itself was released in a pack, and some of you probably know what I'm referring to there. But so we're not going to go over like the Southern Islands or the W stamp promos or pre-release cards that you could get, from leagues or different events or something like that. But before we jump into there, I hope that everyone else is excited as I am about the new Detective Pikachu stuff coming up. I do have some of this stuff for order, but for the most part, I think it's going to be a huge hit, and I'm looking forward to seeing what actually is inside of these Detective Pikachu packs. But first off, we're going to start with the Legendary Collection. Right now, you can get a box for about $7,500 on eBay. I think that's a pretty decent price for it. It has come down lately, probably just because, there was a lot of hype around the set, mainly because it has still a set with the reverse holographic firework. And it was also the very first reverse holographic set. And it's just like the reverse holos are now. You only got one per pack. I still remember opening these and I thought, man, these are stupid. I want the original cards. It was a Jolteon holographic out of the pack. I'm like, I don't want the one with that symbol right there on the side that's like an upside down or with like a medal or an exclamation mark. I want the one with the jungle symbol. But now everyone loves this set. The reverse holographic Charizard is the top of the game for this, and worth about $1,250 in PSA or a PSA 10. I think if you looked on eBay, you probably if you wanted to buy it this second, right after you saw this video, you'd be looking about $1,500. And then the most expensive card, which is kind of a shocker in the price itself, but not in the card, Charizard. Again, it's the holo from this set. The pop on it is really low. It's at 9. So not only is it the most popular Pokemon within the set, you've got the Charizard. It's got the highest rarity, which is holo in the set. It's also got one of the lowest pops in pop reports for a PSA at only 9 copies existing. So if you hear me say pop, I'm referring to the population report through PSA, which is the company that grades them at a 10. And there are only 9 copies of this Charizard in their report. Now, there is one other holographic that's less, and that's the Dark Blastoise. I think it's at a 5, or it was recently. But the $6,000 sale that I'm referring to, I believe I saw that go several months back through auction. And you know what? I can see it. It's just a really popular card, and it's hard to grade, and it's at the top of its game. The other cards in the set don't even come close to that. Right now, there are none on eBay that I know of, or if there is, I just missed it by searching incorrectly. Moving on to the next set, we have Skyridge, another very popular set. This is the last set printed under Wizards of the Coast. I would estimate that if a box came up now and went to auction, it'd probably fetch around $15,000, maybe a little less than that, because I believe the last auction was like $12,500 or something like that. But if you wanted to buy one today, you're looking at about $19,000. There's a guy up on eBay with it for that price. And then if you go into the cards, the most expensive reverse holo, I believe, is going to be the Oracle. There is a sale on this card for $1,700 on eBay. I do not know if that was a legit sale. I did see that there was another one put right back up for $1,700. I didn't check the cert to see if it was the same card. But the fact that it was at least a $40 card, non-holographic, ungraded, that could really ramp up to a high price if it's low pop, which I believe it is, because the reverse holo is going to be even much more rare, and then to have a PSA 10 copy on a reverse holo is hard to do, especially with these sets that have the delicate reverse holographic surface. And then, of course, the most expensive card again is the Charizard. This is the only appearance of Crystal Charizard, and is Skyridge is only one of 2 sets that had Crystal Pokemon in English. If you wanted to buy the card today, you're looking at about $4,500. The $2,500 price is basically what I would think that it would go through in auction if it's sold today. There have been some recent sales for $3,000 to $4,000, but for those, they are a little bit older, and this card is relatively easy to grade. I remember I sent in 6 of these at once. 3 of them got 10s, and the other 3 I got back. I ended up sending back in, and they got 10s as well. Here, next up, we have Team Rocket. So we're going to go into our first set that has the first edition stamp. This isn't the first set printed that way, but the first set in this video that we're going over. Right now, you can get a box for about $2,000, which is very reasonable. I think that price is going to go up. It's been coming back down off of the hype that we had from the previous year or two. One particularly hard card to grade in the set is the Dark Magneton. That's because a lot of the hollow fulls on lighter cards, they're delicate and the scratches show up a lot easier. For this one, the pop isn't really that low. I don't think it is, but for a Dark Magneton, I mean, people think of this card. I mean, this is the hollow I don't want to pull. It's kind of like the Dark Weezing or the Dark Vileplume, but it still brings a really good price on the PSA 10 side because it's hard to get. And then if you're looking at the most expensive, best case scenario card that you could pull out of a Team Rocket booster box is the first edition Dark Dragonite. This isn't an ordinary Dark Dragonite. Down here in the corner, I should have did like a picture where it shows you. It actually says 5 out of 82. So if you're not familiar with Team Rocket, the 5 out of 82 is actually the holographic version. If you notice here, this one is not holographic. Over here with the Dark Magneton, you can see all the foil part in the picture. The number 5 was supposed to be hollow, but as we saw with the Unlimited set, on the uncut sheet, if you saw the photo that I have on Instagram, some of the Dark Dragonites, the rare, was printed onto the uncommon sheet. And really, it was, instead of it being number 22, if it had been number 22, then nobody probably would have ever known. But because it was number 5, people know that this card was supposed to be holographic, but for some reason it wasn't. And that reason was it was printed with the uncommons. So I would imagine if you pulled this from a booster box, it would be in the uncommon slot. Now, I can't say that for sure because no one has recorded it, but that would be my speculation. Right now, if you wanted to buy it today, there's only one person on eBay who has it up for sale. And it's like $140,000, which I think is quite a bit higher than what it is worth in reality. But there's only 3 in the population report, so it is a tough call for sure. You'd have to be someone who's really, really into arrows and trying to complete that set. So next up, we have our first Neo set, which is Neo Discovery. This box, for the longest time, was probably the least favored of all the Neo sets, mainly because it wasn't the first, it wasn't the last, it didn't have shinings. The only card in it really that stuck out that people liked was the Umbreon and the Espeon. So to me, if there was a card that should be the most expensive in the set, it would be the first edition holographic PSA 10 Umbreon. But because it's so dark, I think that's what makes it a lot easier to grade. And because it's easier to grade, it's not that hard to find. So you can find a PSA 10 copy of this card for about $500 on eBay. Ironically, one of the least favorite cards, again, was Yanma. And this first edition copy in PSA 10 is really tough. I believe there are only 9 in the population report right now. And there's a lot of people who collect the Neo set. So for me, if I saw this go on auction, I bet it would fetch at least $4,000, or that would be where the rate, about the price point I would expect it to go. But it could very well go for more, and then if it could go for less if there's a few people who are really hardcore, they want that PSA 10, they gotta have it. If they're not so set on that higher end price, it may not go for that much. It's one of those cards where it has nothing to do with the popularity. It only has to do with how many are available out there and how many people want to pay that premium for that little bit of difference in the condition. PSA 9 for a long time you can get about $30. I think they're up about 100 now, just because some people think it's probably better to buy 10 of these at a PSA 9, regrade them, and maybe get a 10 out of it. And if they did, I mean, it would be cheaper, but it doesn't change the fact of the grade of the condition that it originally came in. So next up, we have Jungle. So first edition box, very reasonable, around $2,500. If you know what the base set box price is, that's a huge drop off. And this is the second set ever printed, and you can still find a box for $2,500. I mean, that seems pretty good. But based on how many were printed, it's a pretty well established market, and it's understandable. You have the Vaporeon first edition, which again, Vaporeon and Kangaskhan, those were the cards that come in the theme decks. Everyone had them. I always had like 50 or 60 of these things when I was selling in Wizards of the Coast, because all over the place. But in the first edition, on the first edition side of it, they're not as readily available. And then when you go to PSA, then you're really having to look at every little detail. So a PSA 10 copy is a lot harder. In the pop report, there are several jungle hollows that are hard to get just because of that chipping around the edges. But if you're wanting to buy a Vaporeon PSA 10, you're looking at about $700 or so. Then the absolute best case scenario is that you pull a first edition Pikachu, but this isn't a regular first edition Pikachu. This is the promo Ivy Pikachu. So yes, it is a Black Star promo, but as someone confirmed in a video on YouTube, you can actually get these out of first edition packs. So I would speculate if you got one of these and you pulled it and you sent out to PSA and it come back at 10, that it'd be worth about $1,500. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. It's hard to tell because there aren't any on eBay. But because it's a non-holographic card, I would think that it's not that hard to grade. Now, and I didn't mention in this video, on the unlimited side of boxes, you could get no symbol hollows, where it's the jungle symbol, which is below the right corner of the picture. Those weren't present on some of the hollows from the Jungle Unlimited set. Those PSA 10s do bring a pretty good price, but I don't think they go quite as high as the Vaporeon, and definitely not as high as this Pikachu. Next up, we have Neo Revelation, probably my favorite Neo set. Right now, I don't think there are any first edition booster boxes on eBay. I would think it'd bring about 6,000 in auction today, but the last sale was January 15th or January 19th, 15th, something like that. There was a sale that was over $8,000. It says it was by now our best offer, but when I searched by the monetary value, it still yielded a result when I searched the parameters for over $8,000. And I believe there was another that sold before that, 6,000 and some. It seems like a bit of a jump to go all the way up to 6,000 and 8,000 when it was only $2,000 and $3,000 just a year or two ago. But it may very well be that high because Neo Revelation is getting really, really tough to find. This set had the introduction of Shinings to the Pokemon world. So our first Shining was Shining Gyarados, and then the second was Shining Magikarp. I know it seems backwards, but it was just the set number. Gyarados would come before Magikarp because of the name. Back then they did it in alphabetical order. If you want to do it by number, then of course it would be the Magikarp. These were the only Shinings that I can think of that did not have the texture. They had the regular holographic background, like regular hollows that started off at the beginning of the set. These were secret rares at the end of the set. The Shining Gyarados, if you look down here in the bottom right-hand corner, it also has just 1 star, where the Shinings from Neo Destiny were triple stars. You would think Shining Gyarados would be the most expensive card from the set, but I would say that for sure Ampharos or Blissey would fetch the highest price in PSA 10, because Ampharos is pop to 6 and Blissey's is at 8. I would think Blissey's a little bit harder to grade, but Ampharos, I mean, it only has 6. I mean, the numbers don't lie. I would think that if it went auction, it would bring $2,500 or more. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I haven't kept up with the sales on these cards so much so that I can tell you exactly what the market would be. And the fact that there are only 6 in there in the pop report tells you that the market itself really isn't something that you could draw out with a linear plot. It'd just be more like data points. But both of them, neither one of them you can find on eBay right now. If you have one of these in PSA 10, you might want to throw it up because the market has been dry for a while. Next up, we have an interesting set, Fossil. So the first edition box, probably the cheapest first edition box that you can buy out there, about $1,500, maybe even less if you're patient or if you want to throw out an offer. And this is on eBay, so I mean, the seller itself, they're clearing maybe $1,300 off of this. The unlimited box, about $900, and then you have the really rare red logos box, which I would think would bring at least $8,000, and that's based on over $200 per pack plus a premium for the box being sealed. Whether or not it would bring that, I do not know. It could bring way more than that if there are booster box collectors out there who are trying to find this variant. The red logos variant was printed in Australia, kind of like the Jungle of red logos variant. They are printed in English though, because the language is different. We're going to go through the most expensive cards for those 3 boxes. So the red logos box, we're going to start off with that one. It's kind of depressing if you open up the box, because if you pull a holographic card, if you look right there at that era, it says 1999-2000 dated. The reason it has a premium is because all of the cards in that set should be dated 1999-2000, which gives them a completely different print that is distinguishable from the original fossil print. However, the holos do not have those datings. They have the original 1999 dates. So if you open up a Red Logos pack and pull a holo, there's nothing different from their original fossil set holographic. So it's just worth what the original is. However, if you don't get a holographic pack, which should be 24 of the 36 packs, if you just get a non-holographic rare, that rare is typically worth $100 to $150 or so. If you get graded PSA 10, I haven't seen many copies on eBay go for more than $300, and it really doesn't have anything to do with scarcity. In this case, I believe it has more to do with there are only a few people out there trying to collect a set, because a lot of people don't know about it, and it's really tough to do. It took me a while to complete my set. So if you open up the first edition box, I think the most expensive card that you could get is, guess what? Another starter, Lapras. It was hard to grade. It gets about $800. There are a couple other cards in the set that would get close to that, like Articuno, just because Articuno is actually popular and people like it. Lapras and the other one, Muck. Those were the two theme deck cards, and nobody wanted them. But on the first edition side, they're just as rare as the other first edition holographic cards, and it's tougher to grade. Now, if you go into the unlimited side of it, an era that was really brought back to light, I guess I didn't even know about it recently, was the broken footprint in the symbol for the Krabby. That's what this is. This is a common Krabby, but the foot symbol on it is broken up, and it's something that's been repeated several times. And there are a lot of errors and misprints within old Wizards of the Coast Pokemon that's repeated, but for some reason none of them have reached the price like Krabby has. And I think it may just be hype, because I've seen them sell for $50 or less, and I've seen them sell for over $500. But I haven't seen any PSA 10 copies. So I bet if you go on eBay right now, I think the cheapest you can find is probably for about $1,000 ungraded on one of these things. But if a PSA 10 come out, you could probably find someone who's going to pay you $1,000, maybe even more. We'll have to wait and see how rare this card is. I remember at a time I was willing to pay $500 for the War Turtle era from base set ungraded. And after I started buying a few of them and the community become aware of what the card was, the price really went down. And now it's about a $100, $200 card ungraded. And this is years later. And then there's a wild card in this set. So some of the holographics from the Unlimited Fossil set had a different type of foiling pattern. If you look over here at the Fossil Lapras, you've got the stars, which matches the base set, and the Jungle set. After in Team Rocket and later, base set 2, Team Rocket, and later sets, they switched over to this Galaxy foil or Cosmos, where it has like bubbles and circles instead of the stars. And I personally got 4 of them from someone in Washington who worked at the print production factory. She didn't tell me they were tests. I mean, I don't know if they were tests. I don't know if they went in booster packs. They may have just come with the holos themselves. So a lot of people think they are tests, but we don't know. And then there's been another person who I believe their set also originated out of Washington, has a full set of holos that have this foiling pattern to it. So if you were somehow lucky enough to open up a fossil booster box that probably come from the factory out in Washington, and it had this type of holofoil, and they come back PSA 10, $1,000, no problem. I think there would be several collectors out there who would be willing to pay that type of amount. And I would imagine if you pulled one holographic like that from the box, the other 11 would have the same type of foiling pattern, and you just hit the gold line. So if I was to open up any fossil box, it would definitely be unlimited, because there's the best potential there for something to pay back the amount that you put into the box itself. Red Logos is probably the worst box to open up from Wizards of the Coast, period. Next up, we have Neo Destiny. This is probably the fan favorite for the Neos. Right now, you're looking at 10K plus probably to buy a box, and I doubt that'll go down. You might be able to sneak in a little less than that, but Neo Destiny, even the unlimited boxes, they're really, really in high demand. People love this set. It's got the shinings, the texture shinings, several of them, but really, it's not that great of a payoff. So the best non-holographic card I think you can get is the Light Togetic. Dark Espeon, of course, it's up there too. But I went with this one. I went with Light Togetic and gave you a price on that one because it has the lowest pop in both the first edition and unlimited version of it. The first edition has 28 copies in first as PSA 10, and the Unlimited only has 3. And that's not because Unlimited is that much more rare. It's just because people like the first edition cards, and those are the ones that get graded. Usually when you have 30, 40, 50 of something graded PSA 10, in which a lot of hollows from Wizard of the Coast are over 100, most are probably over 100. That usually gives you 2, 3, 4 times that in PSA 9s and 8s and so forth. So you have a well-established market for it. And I would think that the Light Togetic is worth about $500 or so. But your absolute best pull that you could get from a Neo Destiny booster box is the Shining Charizard, and it would have to be, of course, first edition. And if it come back PSA 10, then you're looking at about $2,300. I see this price going up slowly, linearly over time. You've got the it was about $2,000 or so, maybe in the past year. That's where I bought most of mine for, and then I've seen some go as high as $3,000. Moving on to, well, actually, let's go back to Neo Destiny for a second. This Light Togetic right here, I saw on eBay where one lucky guy actually got one of these for $61.60 in PSA 10. It was listed, I think, by Graded Power. They probably are thinking the same thing everyone else was thinking. Hey, Togetic, nobody likes it. Let me just throw it on here. I don't see one on eBay, and I bet you that thing was snagged within minutes. Moving on to base set 2. This set isn't really exciting, but you can still find a box for about $2,000. It was the first reprint. It had it was a combination of base, fossil, and jungle, and I think it had like 20 hollows in it. Of course, the most expensive card that you would normally pull, or that you would think you would pull, is the Charizard. PSA 10 copy is about $800. You might be able to fetch $1,000 on a good day, but I think I turned down an offer for $750 here recently. I was trying to get it because I got an additional 10% eBay bucks and 6% also for Ebates. But I would think that the best card that you could actually pull in PSA 10 is Wigglytuff. Again, another card that isn't as popular, but because it's light, it makes it really tough for PSA to grade and give it a perfect gem mint 10. There are only 7 of these in the pot. There's none on eBay right now. So if you send it through auction, there are people who collect base set too, and I would think this could easily fetch $1,000. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it'd fly under the radar. But for those of you who are looking for it, you're probably going to hate this video if it blows up, because this is one of those cards that it could easily get in. Someone could put it up for $100 just because they think, oh, this, you got Blastoise on here for $200. You've got, Gyarados for $100 at PSA 10. Wigglytuff, sure, we'll put it at $100 and maybe it'll sell, but it would sell very, very quickly. So we have Gym Heroes next. I would definitely not open this booster box. It's worth about $2,000. You'd be looking about $2,300 now on eBay to get it. Your absolute best pull you could find is the Blaine's Moltres, and if you come back PSA 10, which it really isn't that likely, you'd be looking at about $400. I mean, that's not a great return. And then I also threw in a Brock here because it has the lowest pop in both first edition and unlimited. First edition there's about 43 of those, and then there's only 6 in the unlimited. And again, that's not because there's so many more, or just that much less in the unlimited. There's just that many less graded because it's not as popular. People want the first edition and stuff. So those are the cards they send in to PSA to have graded and have perfected. I think one sold for about $120. That was one of those cards, I'm telling you, I think it just flew under the radar. I bet if the Brock come out again, it would probably fetch a higher price than that, or if someone put it in a buy now, it could easily get $300. So next up we have Gym Challenge. This is an interesting set. It's a little bit more expensive than the Gym Heroes, mainly because it has Charizard in it. I think a box right now is running about $2,300. The first edition Charizard, not that expensive. The Blaine's Charizard, I mean, even the ungraded ones, it's over $100. But if you want to get this thing PSA 10, you can still find it for about $600. It's not that tough. There's a lot of them graded. I believe the pop report is over 200, and that makes it relatively easy to cycle through and for people to be selling, because if you have the highest grade of something, there's no more potential for it, so people are going to sell it here and there and just bring in new stuff for their collection. Something interesting with the unlimited set, there's a Blaine's Charizard that has a corrected fire symbol. So if you can't see that right there, on the original it has a fighting symbol, and then with the first edition set, it was never corrected. With Unlimited, there are both the uncorrected and the corrected. The Unlimited Blaine's Charizard with the fighting energy symbol instead of fire, it's about $200. But you find the corrected one, which is a lot harder, and most of them are overseas because we believe that's where that box was released. That one right there, I believe, is worth $800, maybe even more. There was one recent sale for it, but this card, it's one of those cards that has the potential because there's not a lot of people out there who know about it. There was a second era card in the Gym Challenge series that was also corrected in this print run, and that was the Rockets Minefield Gym. If you go and check your stash right now, most of you will probably have cards that do not have that 2 there. It'll just say damage counters on that Pokemon, which is an error, and it was later corrected, and the 2 was stuck in there. Next up, we have Aquapolis. For me, this site is really nice. It looks great, but the cards, if you think about it, they don't really deliver on the price end of it. That's because it was a relatively easy box to grade. I think you're looking about 10,000 now if you wanted to buy this today, but $6,000 is probably a more reasonable price for because it's been coming back down. The booster packs are about 150 bucks or so. Ampharos, this is one that has a little bit of merit to it. There's only 16 in the pop. I would think this is about a $300 PSA 10 holographic card, but a lot of the other ones you can find for $100, $150. Now, this was the first set with crystals. You have the Crystal Lugia, which is the top. There was Lugia, Kingdra, and Nidoking. And, of course, Lugia is the most popular of that. It was the last card from the Generation 2. And if you want a PSA 10 copy, you'd be looking at about 1,200 bucks or so. Now, in Aquapolis, there were no reverse hollows for the crystals, but that did change with Skyridge. As you know, all 6 of the crystals that they had also had 6 reverse holographics. Next up, we have Expedition. And this box, I love the orange look to the outside of the box. It's $4,500 or so to buy right now. I think that's a little low. It could probably get up there with Legendary Collection Skyridge, in my opinion. A lot of the cards in it are underestimated. YouTube, there's nothing really special about this in the pop report. I just put it in here because this is my absolute favorite artwork. If I had to choose one artwork, I would choose this one. This is the card that I really, really like. And it's as a PSA 10, it's worth about 350 bucks, so it's not anything outlandish. And then of course the top of the top for this set is the Charizard at 1,200 bucks, and this is kind of disregarding the reverse holographics for the Expedition and the Aquapolis and Skyridge because a lot of that market is still not established yet, and as more collectors enter into the market and they want to complete a reverse holo set, some of those cards are going to be tough, and it may easily surpass cards like this Charizard, who's not that hard to grade. Now, I will mention too that this set was the first pack set that introduced the e-reader cards. And that's what you see on the side right here, these bars. A lot of the non-holographics had barcodes that you could scan into e-reader and play a little game. The very first e-reader cards, I think, were the Ho-Oh and Rapidash, and the samples that were distributed. I've got a whole different story on that one, so we won't go into it. Next up, we have Neo Genesis. A lot of potential in this box. It's about $4,000 for our first edition booster box, probably the cheapest booster box from the Neo series that you can buy right now, but it has, I think, the most potential. You have Lugia, which is great. He's not on eBay right now. I would think that he would fetch at least $2,000, no problem. The pop on him isn't that low. He's still only got 39, but that's not really that low compared to some of the other cards in the set, like Meganium, Slowking, and Typhlosion, which we'll go into. But he's so popular, everyone wants him, and he's a tough grade still. You can't find Nick copies of this guy anymore. So I would think that he would bring at least $2,000. He might bring more because with this stuff, the market has been dry. Typhlosion has the lowest pop by far, and if you got the perfect copy sent off to PSA, got it as a 10, I would think you would easily pay for the entire booster box, no problem, probably even more than that. There hasn't been one on the market for a while, and I know there's a lot of people looking for this particular card. And there's other cards like Slowking that's probably worth around the 2,000 mark, and you got Meganium probably worth around $1,000. That any of these cards, if you pull from this box and they were perfect, you probably just hit the jackpot. So last up, we're going to finish off with base set, and we're going to go into 3 different boxes. We're going to go into the Unlimited, the Shadowless, and the first edition. And then I'll go through all 3 of these right now. We're not going to go into the 1999-2000 box because I believe that could almost do an entire video on itself. So over here with the Unlimited, if you look at that red arrow, it points at the Wizard logos. The reason I did that there is because that's what's the big difference between the Unlimited and the Unlimited Shadowless. On the Unlimited Shadowless, there is the Green Wing Charizard. But with the regular Unlimited, you could have Green Wing Charizard, you could have Blue Wing Charizard. But the main thing is, if it has those logos, then it probably has Unlimited booster packs inside. And on the bottom, it should have more than one country code for the Unlimited. $3,000, that's a pretty reasonable price right now for a box. If you're looking for a mint box, then you're probably going to have to pay up a little bit more. And if you want it from a reputable seller, you're probably going to have to pay even more up, because most sellers know that the base set is almost always increasing, always getting more rare and hard to find. It's one of the boxes that I have the most of, and I collect because it's just a safe investment. Now, if you look over here at the unlimited shadowless, I put it at $15,000. That's approximately what I would think it would go to if you went through auction today. However, if you wanted to buy one today, you're probably going to be looking at, I think the lowest one I saw online was like $25,000, and it's a very reputable seller. So I think you would have no problem buying that box and it actually being shadowless. But even for me, it's tough to spend that kind of money on anything and still not know for sure, because there are a lot of fakes out there. There are a lot of people who can rewrap these boxes and make them look right, and they're not. And that's why the first edition booster box is so expensive. I think the last one on eBay went in auction for like $42,000 or so. But I'm telling you now, if someone put one up for $70,000 and they're very reputable, it would sell probably in time. It might even sell overnight. I heard someone actually come to a message saying that one sold for $78,000 or so on some random auction site recently. And if that's the case, it's not surprising. And it's because this is the rarest of the rare in English Pokemon. It's the hardest stuff to find. It's the most original and intact. So if you want that premium, you're going to pay a premium, especially if you have to do it in a way that doesn't allow you to open it up, because then it just degrades its value if it is real. All right, so let's go on to the best cards for the set. So we're going to address all three of the Charizards. First, you've got the Unlimited. It's worth about $1,500 as a PSA 10. No surprise there. It's come down from about $2,000. And then if you go to the Shadowless, it's worth about $20,000. You're like, whoa, what a jump. And for those of you who do not know the difference, if you look right there on the right side of the picture, there is a shadow on the first picture on the left, and on the right side there is not. You may also notice some subtle differences like the font, the coloring, the dates at the bottom they're slightly different. The shadow is the easiest way to tell, and the middle version is actually unlimited. It's not even the rarest Charizard you can find, but it is shadowless. It's shadowless unlimited. If you want to buy one today, it's about $28,000 on eBay, but I don't think a reasonable price is about $20,000. Then, of course, you have the rarest of all, which is the first edition Charizard. And the only difference between the middle picture and the picture on the right is this first edition stamp. And so for those of you who are familiar with the game, you're like, duh, I mean, I know this. But for those of you who are not, this isn't always as apparent. That little stamp right there makes a huge difference. If you wanted to buy it today, you'd be looking at $150,000. However, I think if it went through auction, $50,000, maybe more, maybe a little bit more than that, would be the price that it would potentially fetch on eBay and other places too. I mean, who knows? What's it, Gary? Who's Zelda Gilroy? Professional sports authenticators, whatever you want to call him. You know, he's the guy with the $1 million listing on eBay, and he's got probably the most PSA 10 Charizards of anyone at the moment. We're going to go into a few other cards just to address them. There are several base set errors that are big. We're only going to address 4 of them, so we're going to do 2 in this first slide here. We've got the Ghost Pikachu. If you've never heard of the Ghost Pikachu, if you look at it right there, it's actually supposed to have a first edition stamp, but it does not. It's missing the D and the 1 part of it, so it's only like a partial first edition stamp. And then there's also the Ninetales, which is missing 80 damage. So right there in its Fire Blast attack, it's supposed to have an 8 and a 0 as the attack, but it does not. The Pikachu was ruled that it's been pulled from the Zap theme deck, and the Ninetales recently was shown to come from the Brushfire theme deck. So I don't think these actually come from the booster pack, so we're not going to go into them. The next 2, we've got the War Turtle, which has an evolution box error. If you look in the top left, instead of a Squirtle, it has a War Turtle up there. And then you got Blastoise, which has the no stage error. In the top right-hand corner is missing the word stage. So the $2,000, I think that's a fair value for the War Turtle. It's rough. It's rough to find. However, when you do find it, it's not that rough to grade. And there are several copies on eBay right now. And I think $2,000 is probably a fair price, maybe even a little less. Now, with the Blastoise, I put a cost of $3,000. However, I think that may even be low, because this card is tough to grade PSA 10. I graded one of these and actually got a PSA 10 back, but I didn't expect it. I expected to get about an 8, because that where it's missing the word stage, it's almost like there's a smudge there, and it takes away from the appeal of the surface. And I don't think there are going to be many more of these ever graded at a PSA 10. So if you're looking for one of these and you see one available, you probably want to go ahead and snag it. So I appreciate you guys for watching the video, and I want you to put down there in the comments, what's your favorite artwork? Tell me what your favorite card is printed under Wizard of the Coast. Mine was that Mewtwo. And to me, I like the way he's up in the air. It's got the lightning in the background. So I'd love to hear what your favorite artwork is. And thanks for watching.